SOAL Night Live, number 9. Welcome. Thanks for dropping by tonight. My guest tonight is one of the busiest working guys in all of modern progressive rock, Mr. Nick DiVirgilio, who has played with the likes of Spock's Beard, Tears for Fears, Kevin Gilbert, and he's also part of a more recent group called Big Big Train. Let me backtrack a little bit. You know, progressive rock was very much a 70s kind of thing. And it had its heyday in the 70s, and then it sort of went away for a little while, or so the media would make you think. And basically, it just went underground. And during that time, excuse me, I'm clicking a few links here. During that time, a new generation of fans came along that loved bands like Genesis and Yes, and wanted to make their own music that was with a similar ideal. And out of that rose the 90s progressive rock resurgence. And I'd say there were a handful of bands that really spearheaded this, which were basically Dream Theater, which of course you've heard of. But I can think of 3 other bands that were really at the forefront of that 90s progressive resurgence. A group out of Sweden called the Flower Kings, and a US group called Echolin, and one other called Spock's Beard. You might remember the episode when they're in a parallel universe on Star Trek, and it was like the evil Spock with the beard. Well, these guys named their band after him, after that particular episode. So Nick is the drummer, or was, I should say. He's the original drummer. He's gone on to do a lot of other things, and he was even the front man for a while, kind of a la Genesis and Phil Collins. We'll get into all of that pretty soon. So anyhow, yeah, stick around. If you're familiar with Nick's work, come on and ask him some questions. I'll be keeping an eye out for him. And if you're not, stick around anyway. He's a fascinating individual, and he's worked with the likes of Cirque du Soleil as well, and Sweetwater, everybody's favorite online music distributor warehouse. So stick around. I'll be bringing Nick in about 15 minutes. In the meantime, I just wanted to go over a few different things. You know, it's been a hell of a week, I think, for everybody. And I'm hoping that as the dust is clearing, we can move forward and look at the future day by day with an open mind and an open heart. So my thoughts are with you all. I hope you're staying strong. Love one another. That's the answer. In other news, you might know I'm part of a local collective of musicians that have put on a number of different tribute shows over the years, pretty much one a month for a number of years. And it's a collective of well over 100 different local musicians called the Bad Ash All-Stars, which I'm very lucky to be part of. And we lost one of our own today, our saxophonist, Patrick Ballinger. We don't really know yet. We just got the word about an hour ago. So my heart goes out to his family at this time. I played with Patrick many times over the years, and he was a brilliant musician. Most recently, did Steely Dan Night Up at the Velvet Note, I think back in November. And I think I played with him since then. I think my keyboard player, Scott Ritchie's birthday. So Godspeed, Patrick. You know, it's hard to believe, and I just can't really process it right now. But I've found that music is the thing that we need in these tough times. And in a way, you can feel like it's all rather trivial, but in another way, it's more important than it ever has been, because in the face of insanity, we need a respite as often as possible. So stick around, take your mind off everything for the next couple hours. Alrighty, let's see here. We're going to bring in Nick in just a few minutes here. And I also have a co-host with me tonight, my old friend Carlos Baez. We were in a group called Mindworm together about 20 years ago, rather Genesis sounding group. But I have what I call vinyl confessions that I do each week, where I round up 10 albums from my vinyl collection and give you a little brief rundown on why you should own them if you don't already. In the past week, you might have heard about the passing of a producer by the name of Rupert Hine. It's not Rupert Holmes, the Pina Colada guy. It's Rupert Hine. And he produced albums like Reach the Beach from The Fix. And he also did a couple mid-period albums with Rush, Presto and Roll the Bones, and a number of others. I mean, it's a long list of people that he's produced. Here's one that you might have seen before, Worlds Apart from Saga. It's probably their biggest commercial release. It has the hit On the Loose on here, and also a tune called Wind Me Up. And it's wonderful progressive pop prog, and I'd say this is one of Rupert's best production jobs. So check it out. You probably heard it. If you're a child of the 80s, you definitely heard it. And if you haven't heard it, check it out. Saga's awesome stuff. All right, my next one. Ex-Genesis guitarist Steve Hackett has a really diverse and plentiful solo catalog, and he's still cranking them out to this day, and that's awesome. I think in some ways Steve Hackett embodies the progressive ideal that Genesis had early on more than anybody else that was in the band. He's carried it on, and he's put out a string of fantastic albums that stand up on their own. And I think this is like his second song. It has a guest appearance by Phil Ehart and Steve Walsh from Kansas on two songs, Narnia and Racing in A, I think. Also, Richie Havens is on here. Really cool stuff. If you've never heard Steve Hackett, this might be a good place to start. All right. Here's a soundtrack epic album that many of us had in our collections. I think a lot of our parents probably bought this simply because it had a kind of Broadway connection, not because they were into rock music. But make no mistake, it is downright progressive, and it rocks as well. Wonderful playing from everybody, and with Ian Gillan from Deep Purple as Jesus, you really can't go wrong. I know some people prefer the version that came later with Ted Neely, and he's great too, but you know, Ian Gillan will always be the original screaming Jesus. So check this out. I would love to perform this whole album sometime. So let's make it happen in Atlanta. I mentioned last time, Bob Welch was a guitar player and singer that played with Fleetwood Mac for many years, and kind of their lost period and between the Peter Green era and the Buckingham Nicks one. This is a really cool solo album of his called The Other One. Check his stuff out. It's really cool. And he occasionally redoes a Fleetwood Mac tune. I think he does one on here. Future Games. Yeah, like the first tune he ever did with them. It's an awesome tune. All right. I mentioned last week Electric Fusion from Return to Forever. Check out their earlier stuff as well. This is piano and bass, acoustic driven stuff. Again, with Lenny White, there's just no guitar on here. 500 Miles High is a jazz classic that you probably heard. It totally jams. You know, this band, you know, has a lot of different sides to it, and this may be my favorite of all of them. The electric stuff really rocks, but I almost feel like Chip wrote his best stuff earlier. But what do I know? All right. Joe Jackson, Night and Day. You've heard the big hit from this one, Steppin' Out. The rest of it is awesome too. And I love the artwork here. I'm trying to remember the guy's name. He used to do stuff in TV Guide all the time. Great character portraits. And he always worked his daughter's name into every picture. Like, I forget what her name was, but that was part of it. All right, we're talking big progressive rock stuff tonight. How about arguably the greatest, most ambitious progressive rock album ever? The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway from Genesis. This was the last one with Peter Gabriel before he went solo. And it ties in tonight because Nick is one of the few people that's had the pleasure of performing this album outside of the guys in Genesis and the guys in Genesis tribute bands like the Musical Box, who do a great job of it. But we'll get more into this in a few minutes. Anyway, this is arguably the greatest progressive rock album. I might vote for Tales from Topographic Oceans instead, but that's just because I'm such a devout yes head. But I cannot deny the brilliance of the Lamb. And to wrap it up, Shakti. You know what that word means? It means energy. And I think that was a great name for John McLaughlin's Indian-inspired group that followed up Mahavishnu. So if you're after acoustic shred, this is some of the classiest stuff around. So, alrighty. And one last one. This is a group that you might have heard of called Camel. And this is one of their biggies. It's Moon Madness, which is one of their classic albums, anchored by the wonderful guitar playing of Andy Latimer, who reminds me sort of a jazzy David Gilmour, if David Gilmour had more interesting chord progressions to play over. So, alrighty. So that wraps up my vinyl confessions for the week. Check those out. Awesome stuff. Alrighty, I am ready. Let's see here, hold on just a second. Carlos, if you want to swing back this way, I will introduce you and then we will bring in Nick. Okay. So I hope y'all are doing well this week. And thank you so much for dropping by here. Again, my guest tonight is Nick DiVirgilio, who's drummer and vocalist with some of the better known progressive rock bands of the last 20 to 30 years. And my co-host tonight is my old bandmate from a group I was in many years ago called Mindworm, Mr. Carlos Baez. So I'm going to bring Carlos in now and talk a little bit about that band we were in, and then we're going to bring in Nick. So stick around, and thanks for coming out here tonight to SOAL Night Live number 9. Number nine. Hey, there he is.
How's it going?
How are you, brother?
Doing great. You?
I'm doing well. I like your reverb in there. That's good. Is that slapback or?
I don't know. I'm in our little library drinking room place. High ceiling.
So yeah, I was talking about that album we were on back in the day, and remember that?
Mindworm.
That's right.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You came up with a great bass line for this one.
Oh, thank you. I thought everybody did a great job. I mean, that song was. I was pretty proud of that. I think we did a great job with that.
I thought it turned out really nice too. It was almost like our musical box in a way, although that wasn't intentional. It just kind of wound up like that with a really long guitar solo at the end.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. Yeah, you did a great job on that too. Everybody sounded great.
Yeah, there was one a group that we were in with Kirk Barnes on keyboard and vocals, and Sean Malone on drums, who I still play with occasionally and see. Very recently. So how did you hook up with those? How did you meet them? Do you remember now? Or did you answer an ad or? You were there one day.
Yeah, I think I answered an ad on the Loaf, right? Wasn't it?
The Creative Loafing kind of musician ad paper.
I think that's how it happened. And I mean, we just kind of came together, and it was just that was a really interesting band. I'm sorry that my job at the time just sort of prevented me from continuing, but I wish I could have, because there was a lot of promise in that band.
Well, you know, we had a few other bass players after you, but I don't think anybody's heart was in it quite as much as yours was. So I wish you could have worked out.
Yeah, me too. I mean, you know, it was Genesis. You know, I mean, it had that Genesis vibe. So for me, what can I say?
I went Genesis. Kirk's demo tape of like this guy playing Hammond and singing like Peter Gabriel. I'm just like, in Atlanta, I got to know this guy. I got to work with him.
Exactly. I felt the same. And the minute that the four of us got into that room and started slamming away, I was like, wow, there's something here. There's definitely something here.
Yeah, it was. That was a good time. I look back fondly on that. And that is on YouTube. If anybody wants to look it up, it's Mindworm is the band, and the tune is called Trolley. You know, like Mr. Rogers' Trolley.
Yeah. No, that was cool, and I still have the CD.
But yeah. Alrighty. Well, we're going to get Nick in here now. So thank you for your patience, Nick, as I did my preamble. And getting Carlos in here. We're really excited to talk. So let me go ahead and get this rolling here, and go ahead and hit record so I can upload this later. Right here. All right. So without further ado, Mr. Nick DiVirgilio is our guest tonight on SOAL Night Live number 9.
Whoa!
There he is. So
Are we on?
You listen live, man.
Okay, I got to turn Facebook off because I'm going to get all confused here. Hold on a second.
What's going on, man?
I couldn't find for the life of me how to write a comment in Facebook. I was trying to like add while you guys were spieling and stuff, and I couldn't figure it out. But hey, how's it going?
That's weird. I had trouble with that last week. I wonder if there's some setting I'm not thinking about or something. Because
Anyway,
I don't know. Darn it. If anybody else can leave a comment, go ahead and try and leave one now, and we'll see.
There was a bunch of comments on the right side of the screen.
Okay.
People were putting in all kinds of stuff,
So
but I couldn't find the little bar to do it. I don't know. I could be doing it wrong. That's
we'll just turn the tables and have everybody ask you questions. How's that sound?
Sure.
Okay, let me see here. Let me just I'll try and keep track of these as they come in on Facebook and ask them as well. Usually I have a co-host that kind of watches all the incoming, but I think I can juggle it all tonight. So thanks a million for dropping in and staying up late. Where are you at?
I'm in my house.
I have a feeling that might be yours.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like location-wise, state-wise. Or yeah.
Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In the Midwest.
Okay. Well, I'm
Ireland.
Yeah, I'm a Midwesterner myself. I grew up in Topeka, Kansas.
Okay.
And there's something in the water when it comes to prog rock in that town. I'm not sure what it is, but it's a good
Fort
thing.
Wayne, I didn't know this until I moved here and I got to know some people here, but this place has quite a musical history, this little town. The Genesis, you were talking about Genesis a second ago, and you showed the Lamb.
Right?
They played the Lamb in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Wow.
That was one of the towns they came and toured that record in. This place is, for such a small little place in Northeast Indiana, it's got quite a long progressive rock history with Genesis and a bunch of other bands too. But they played the Lamb here in this town.
That's wild. That's wild. I'd love to. Oh God, I wish I was young enough to see that. Or old enough, I should say. Yeah, it's like I couldn't. I was like 6. It's like, Mom and Dad, you got to take me to this concert. You just don't know how important it is. Yeah, I wish it would have happened that way. So I'm guessing
I was into the Osmonds. I didn't get into Genesis until my brother played me that stuff when I was like 8.
Yeah, did you watch the TV show?
Oh yeah. My parents took me to the Tropicana in Las Vegas to see the Osmonds when I was 5.
I was bad. I had a little cassette recorder with remember those Kmart cassettes you get 3 in a pack for like $1, little blue label, and I'd hang the microphone on the TV and it'd be like chastise anybody that walked through the room and breathed while I was recording it. Listen to it later. It's like, that's my Osmond story before I acquired rock sensibility. Although Crazy Horses might have been an entry point. I'll say that was
it's a great tune.
Actually,
they had some. Yeah, there was a couple of moments in there for sure.
I think they really wanted to rock more than they could.
Yeah.
It's like that happened with a lot of people. I think Sean Cassidy is another example. You ever hear about Sean Cassidy making an album with Todd Rundgren called Wasp, where he was going to not be a teen idol anymore and be like Led Zeppelin or something? It's an interesting curiosity if anybody hasn't heard it.
Okay.
What's it called?
It's called Wasp, W-A-S-P, from Sean Cassidy. Todd Rundgren.
I've never heard that. No, I've never heard it either.
There's probably a reason why, but check it out.
Okay.
So I'm guessing you're in Indiana because of the Sweetwater connection, right?
This is where Sweetwater's based. This is our owner, Chuck Surrack's hometown. So this is where the company is. Yeah, I'm born and raised in Southern California, Los Angeles, in the suburbs of LA. And we moved here after my Cirque gig ended. My buddy Mark Hornsby kind of recruited me here to come to this job. And so the family moved to Fort Wayne, Indiana from Los Angeles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Big move.
you know, I love Sweetwater. As a matter of fact, I ordered an amp from them last month. I was just sitting
There you
around the house. It's like I gotta buy some gear. I can't just sit around here. I need a toy to entertain myself with. And
The weather here leaves a lot to be desired, but the town itself and everybody, the people, it's yeah, there's nothing to complain about.
well, it was such a great organization to be part of, I imagine too. And I've seen some of your, like, you make a lot of the instructional videos that kind of clue people to how to use the stuff that they're buying, right?
Well, for mostly drums, although I mean, I'm expanding into some other stuff too, but yeah, for the drum stuff, yeah, a lot of how-tos and sort of like going over gear. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I play with drums a lot.
I've enjoyed watching those, and I'm not even a drummer, so
There you go.
kudos. You know, that makes me want to buy some drums anyway. You're doing something right.
Cool.
Well, cool. Well, you know, I got a lot of questions for you. You know, I founded a forum to talk about progressive rock about 20 years called Progressive Ears, which you might have heard of. It's been around forever.
Yeah.
And I'd say that my passion for being a moderator at a progressive rock forum peaked about 10 years ago. So I haven't been on hand quite as much, but I still share stuff of interest like this there. So I had a lot of folks lining up to ask you some questions. So I've got a list, and it covers a lot of your career, a lot of different spots.
Okay.
So I thought we'd kind of start with some of those and then just kind of go from there.
Whatever you need.
All right. Well, as a lot of folks might not know, and keep in mind, not everybody who watches my show knows what progressive rock is. So let's approach a little of this from that angle and kind of clue my readers and viewers in case they don't know about some of these groups you've been part of. Now, biggest one, obviously, that you were a part of for a little while there was Genesis on the last studio album, Calling All Stations. How do you look back on that time and that album all these years later, and how do you think it slots into the Genesis history? And what was kind of the goal when they fired Genesis back up without Phil at the time?
Oh gosh, I don't mean, listen, man, I was a session musician for that thing, so I don't know what their goal was. I think they were just trying to keep the band going.
Yeah.
And they had some excuse me. You know, they wanted to see what they could do. I don't know exactly. But they went for it and they wrote some songs and they made a record. And I think they were fighting an uphill battle. I mean, they were trying to replace Phil Collins. He was the face and the voice of that band for so many years. And it came at a time in that band when they were, I mean, it was a little bit past it, but you know, they were one of the biggest bands in the world for a long time there. I mean, they had a huge run where they were enormous, playing soccer stadium size gigs all over the place, Pink Floyd size play. I mean, they were huge, right? So
Absolutely.
I think it was a hard thing to replace Phil. Ray Wilson, he's an amazing singer. I love his voice. He writes great songs. Guy's really talented, but it's just tough shoes to fill for anybody in that situation. So I think a lot of fans were, they were in a tough situation. But for me personally, it was a dream come true. I mean, it was my favorite band in the world growing up as a kid. And Phil Collins, my favorite drummer, all these things that anybody who knows me knows that that's the case. And to get to play with I mean, I never in my wildest dreams ever thought that would happen. It just came out of the blue. It really did. So it was an amazing experience, totally fun. And my name's on a Genesis record. I don't know, I still think that's bizarre to this day, and that record's 20 years old or however long it's been. So it's a bizarre thing to know that I'm a very small speck in Genesis history, but it is there.
Well, I think that's one of the coolest aspects. Is that
Totally. It's still weird. I still think of it. It's very strange.
It's awesome. And, I think that album has aged and gotten a little more relevance than maybe when it was new. I think a lot of people didn't even know it came out because they just were kind of under the radar by that point. But, any Genesis completist, has it in their collection. And, I think people felt it was kind of heading a little bit back in more the classic direction and a little away from the kind of plastic 80s sound and 90s sound that they were, making so popular in the stadiums. And Ray's voice kind of sounded a bit like Peter, I guess. So I recently picked up a copy of it, and I thought, this is a little darker, a little less poppy in spots. So yeah, I think it's good. I'd rather listen to that than We Can't Dance personally, but that's just me. I prefer the 70s Genesis personally, but it's all great. It's all great. But being a prog head, well, you know which albums I prefer for obvious reason. All right. Well, you played with a good friend of mine, Mike Keneally.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Tell me how that came about. It was like the Dog album. Was it kind of that era, or did you work with him before that?
A little bit before that. I met Mike for the first time in the mid 90s with Kevin Gilbert. We did a little Yes tribute record, a song called Siberian Katru for one of the I don't know if you remember, the mid 90s tribute records were really popular, and there were people were all kinds. They were doing tribute records for everybody. It was a thing for a while. So there was a few progressive rock tribute things that came out, and the first one I got to do that tune with Kevin Gilbert, and he brought in Mike. It was the first time I ever met Mike and Brian Beller. They were already working together, Mike and Brian. It was the first time I ever met them or knew who Mike was. And then we sort of, over the years became friends. And then one of my best friends in the world, Rick Moose-Solomon, became his guitar player, guitar player in his band. And I used to go see them play at the Baked Potato all the time. And I would love to play in this band. I told Rick, man, if there's ever an opportunity, because Mike only surrounds himself with, and he should, and he deserves it, is the best musicians. I mean, you have to be on your game and know what you're doing to play in Mike's band, because he demands it in just a fun musical way. It's really top-notch stuff. Oh, yeah. And the opportunity came my way to join, and we went out and we did a tour for the Dancing record. And that kind of got me in Mike's band. And then the next record after that was Dog. And so I got to record that with him and Brian and Rick. It's really one of the best musical situations of my entire life, because it was challenging. The guys are fantastic people. I love Brian and Mike and Rick, and we had a great time on the road. But musically, it was just at another level, and it was just super fun. And I'm so happy I was able to do that as part of my career. I love Mike. He's an amazing musician. Like, he's otherworldly.
Yeah, we had him on a couple of weeks ago, and we could have talked till 2 a.m.
He's an amazing. He's a just incredible player. Super nice guy, of course. But I mean, his musicianship he's just one of those guys where whatever he's thinking, it comes out in his hands, no matter what he touches. Either, he just thinks it and he can play it. And it's all flows, and it doesn't matter how hard or difficult it is or super simple. But he can play the most simplest Beatles tune or whatever. Think of the most simplest tune, and it'll be so authentic and sound great. And then he'll turn around and play some sort of Frank Zappa, just the wildest thing in the world, and it'll sound equally as great. So it was a great time, and I loved every second of it. And I'd play with Mike and the guys anytime.
Well, I saw you guys. I think it was at Nearfest.
Yeah.
Did the big epic "This Tastes Like a Hotel." That's what it was called.
It's a weird song, but it was fun to play.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah. So yeah, I'm a big supporter of Mike's. He's got an amazing career as a sideman, but I love his own music better than any of the people.
Totally. Yeah, he's one of the greats for sure.
I never miss a chance to tell people about it. It's because it's just like, I don't want to, almost like the heir apparent to Frank Zappa, but he collided with XTC and Steely Dan on the way to the bank. That just scratches the surface. But he's a
real just student of music, and he gets it all. He's one of those few people in the world that really just, it's all very natural to him, no matter what it is.
Yeah, he's an awesome person. Okay, well, let's see here. Here's another fan question. Any chance of Rewiring Genesis, a tribute to The Lamb Lies Down, being reissued on CD? Remember those old artifacts from the 80s compact discs?
Yeah, I've been talking to Mark, my buddy, who I made that record with, and who's the producer and engineer and mixer of my solo record, Invisible. We made a ton of stuff together. We want to put that record out again. There's a few things we might go back in and tweak after so many years later. But we have all the masters still, and the number of people have been asking about that record lately, and we've been talking about this over the last couple of years. So I think we're gonna, once we can find the time, I think it'd be cool to put that thing back out. I think it was a fun little project.
Okay, it's kind of a twofold question. They're also wondering if you could tell a little bit about how you came to record the album in the first place and what the reception was. And did any of the guys in Genesis ever hear any of it and tell you they liked it or didn't?
Yes. Okay. So Mark will dispute this tale of how it came together, but I think I'm right. He'll say he's right. But anyway, we were sitting around drinking, probably had a couple of these. This is beer. And and Mark always brought crazy ideas to the table musically. We've probably recorded 1,000, 2,000 songs together over the years. I don't know, worked together a ton. And I think after a few beers, he goes, what if we recorded some progressive rock, like in a bluegrass version? Now I say he said bluegrass, and he says he said country, because he worked in Nashville. So he was part of that whole world in Nashville and stuff, and he would bring me there. Anyway, I said, yes, let's try something. So he got a bunch of his friends together, and we started with the song, The Colony of Slipperman. And he had his buddy named John Hinchy, who's a trombone player and a great musical arranger, write out a chart for Colony of Slipperman. And we brought in these group of musicians to Dave Martin's studio called Java Jive in Nashville. And the thing that was so great about that whole project is, other than Mark and myself, nobody really even knew what that music was. So that gave it such a cool, fresh take on it. Everybody knew the band Genesis. They all knew Phil Collins and Genesis, but they weren't fans or followers. So the Lamb was totally foreign to them. So they were reading this music off of sheet music. And I mean, stupendous. These are they're serious players. The guys who were playing piano and accordion. I mean, these are like top-notch Nashville musicians, like crazy good. So they could read anything on a sheet, but the way they interpreted the music gave it this just life to it that was incredible. So we did Slipperman, and it turned out so well, we decided to try and do the whole record, and that's what we did. Awesome. So that's why we just decided to take all the keyboards and the synths and turn them into other instruments. So we have accordion and clarinets and all kinds of stuff playing these parts and getting into that music. And it was a great education, because that music is, when you dive deep into the songs, they're not as hard as they actually sound as far as how they're written. It's some of the changes are very bluesy and just kind of straight ahead. You don't know that until you tear it all apart and get into the changes. It's a really fun project to get into. That's that part. And has any in the band listened to it? We sent the record to all of them. And I know that Tony Banks has heard it, because I've talked to him personally about it. And Mike Rutherford, I think, heard it. And we sent it to everybody else. Steve Hackett, I think, has heard it recently. I don't know about Phil. I doubt Phil or Peter have heard it, even though I'm sure they've been sent copies. Multiple.
That's a cool angle. And I think, when you do that kind of tribute, it's almost kind of more fun to turn something on its ear and do it completely differently.
Listen, and we did it really just.
I mean, who wants a slavish imitation with, you already got the real thing, you're never going to better it. So take it, so it's fresh.
Right.
It was just fun. A lot of those tributes are like that, like you pick it up and it's almost a recreation of everything, just like the record. It's kind of like, well, what's the point of that? But like the Stanley Snail thing that you guys did on Forgotten Yesterdays, the Siberian Katru. I mean, you guys did your own thing. It was pretty faithful, but then you pried it open and you stuck that piece of that UK song in the middle of it.
No, Bruford, not UK.
Bruford
solo.
It was Sahara Snow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought
if you want to get real specific, yes, of course.
Yes. Just in case anybody else can pick it out. That's one of the first tribute CDs I think I even remember seeing. It's like they became a really huge thing in the late 90s and the 2000s, but I think that was one of the first ones that ever kind of got on my radar anyway. So that might have been the first place I heard you play. Didn't even realize it.
There you go.
Very cool. Well, you've got a new solo record out, and I thought we would talk a bit about that. And Carlos, I think, has heard it. I heard the single. I saw the video. The rather dark retelling of a song that the Beatles made. Well known, but they didn't write it either.
No.
So tell us a bit about the opening single. And
That's the second single, by the way. That's not the first single.
okay.
Yeah.
All righty.
The first single is a song called "Where's the Passion." That was out 2-3 weeks ago, and then we just the second single called "Money," the one you're talking about, was released on Friday, so yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
My record is called Invisible. It is a story record, rock opera kind of concept record. Give it a title, but it's one of those things. And it's about a guy, no name person. It could be any one of us who is disgruntled with his life, sort of had enough, feels invisible to the world, could die tomorrow, no one would miss him. It's that kind of stuff. And it goes through his adventures of finding the meaning of his life, and he ends up finding it. So it's a story that kind of, it could be any one of us. We've all had these sort of feelings before. And the song "Money" that you're talking about, "Money, That's What I Want," the original came out in 1959 by a guy named Barrett Strong. And Berry Gordy from Motown actually is a writer of that record, the song. And it's, it's just a funky tune. The Beatles did a great cover of it. There's a few other, the Flying Lizards, I think, did one in the 80s. Is that the band? And a few other ones. And I've always liked the song. And when I was coming up with the story and thinking about the adventures that this person was taking, that song just fit lyrically and fit the vibe of the whole thing. And how the song developed over time just ended up kind of fitting into the whole scenario of the story. So I put it on there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Carlos, you got any questions?
Oh man, where do I even start? Well, Nick already knows how I feel about this record. I emailed him the day I listened to it, and I was so stunned by it, I didn't even know what to say. Where did you come up with these musical ideas? I mean, this music is like so brilliantly done and so unusual, the way that it's kind of sequenced together. And I think I mentioned that it's sort of like a bookend to Shaming of the True in my eyes. It feels that way, that they're kind of go together naturally. But I'm just curious. I mean, how did you approach the writing? Did it just flow, or were these different musical ideas that you came up with over the years here and there? A riff that you came up with a long time ago that it fits here, or did you just write it all in one burst of creativity?
I don't know. So the backstory is that the initial inspiration of this whole thing came when I got my gig with Cirque du Soleil, and sometimes I feel a little bit weird about telling this story, but that's literally where the inspiration came. I got the gig with Cirque du Soleil in 2010. My whole family moved to Montreal to do this job. And I went through 12 weeks of rehearsal. And then when we got to finally out of the rehearsal stage into the show stage, they told me that I'm going to be playing in a drum booth behind the band and no one would see me play. And this really bugged me for a while. Not very long, because it ended up being one of the greatest experiences of my whole life. But at the very beginning, it was like, even though I had a job, I don't know, it just rubbed me the wrong way. I wanted to be on stage and entertaining people. And then I was going to be like, so I felt invisible. It's like, anybody could be back here. It bugged the shit out of me for a little while. But what it did is I got over it quickly, because it was kind of a dumb thing in the grand scheme of things, it was, it worked out tremendously well. But at the beginning, what it did was it inspired me to think of some music. So I had this booth behind the stage of this very elaborate show. If you've ever seen a Cirque du Soleil show, it's like being a part of a giant rock concert every night. I mean, the technology, the PA, the band, the acrobats, it's like super high end, right? I mean, it's really, my particular show was really cool in a bunch of ways too. Musically, I got to play a lot of fun stuff happened. So my booth, I turned into a little sort of like little mini studio, my own little room. I decorated it and put lights in there, and I had speakers and a recording interface and a Pro Tools rig and all this kind of stuff. And so I just started writing a bunch of music while I was just sitting in there in between sound checks and off days and stuff. So it was my own little kind of haven musical thing. So the initial reaction of Invisible got me thinking about that. And then once I got over the reaction of my initial feeling, I started thinking about people who had, legitimate feelings of being invisible, or jobs that are like really hard, you know, people who do the jobs we all take for granted a lot of times, that make life easy for us, that, you know, they do behind the scenes, you never know they're there, all kinds of stuff. So I just started doing more research on that, and this was like a long time ago. This was like in 2013 I started writing these songs. Long story short, they started building over time, and then that concept was always in the back of my mind, but I never really had time to really develop it into a full record or anything, because I had the job at Cirque, and then the job at Cirque ended, and I got the job at Sweetwater, and Big Train was also starting around this time and really taking off. So there's a lot of stuff taking my attention and my time that I was totally dedicated to. I couldn't put enough time into making a solo record. Then a couple of years ago, my friend Mark Hornsby, the same guy for Rewiring, Genesis, and all these other crazy things I've done, heard some of the demos in my car one day, and he said, "Man, you got to make this record. What are you doing holding on to all this stuff?" And he sort of kicked me in the pants and said, "Oh, let's do this." So through my job at Sweetwater, this is a long, drawn-out answer, I'm sorry, but it's kind of where it gets to a point. At Sweetwater, because of my job there, and the thing that Mark built out of our recording studios, we used to get a lot of people, a lot of great artists coming to Sweetwater doing recording workshops, and he really built this thing. So once he heard the songs, he decided, how can we make this record and get all of these drum companies involved? And it just sort of enveloped into this whole thing, which got me inspired to finish the story. That's kind of the point I was trying to get to. I took this concept of invisible, of someone who is tired of their day-to-day life, and they've lost the meaning of like, do they have purpose? They're questioning themselves. Why are they here? They feel lonely and all that kind of stuff. And this particular person goes out to find the meaning of his own life, and he ends up finding it. So it was me developing that story, and I finally did, and made the record. Does that make sense? That was really long and drawn out.
No, that's awesome.
I don't think that's a quest that all of us can identify with on some.
Yeah, totally.
You know, we're all.
The more I researched this stuff and read along, read about all kinds of different things, and just tried to develop the story, I feel like, it's a very typical human emotion. We all feel alone at one point or another in our lives, and we feel inadequate or whatever. And it really got me to the point of, I think that I have a real deep belief that we're all here for something. I think that, with this day and all the crazy shit going on right now, crazy stuff going on in the world right now, it's more important than ever to know that we all are here for a reason. We all have purpose, even if it's the smallest, tiniest thing. There's a reason we're all here, and that was sort of the moral of my whole story too. That's kind of what I wanted to get across, that we're here for a reason, and I really do believe that.
I absolutely agree. Remind folks where they can get the new album at.
So it's totally released yet. The official release date of the whole record is June 26th. The two first singles are out in Where's the Passion and Money. You can get those on Spotify and all the typical streaming sites. There's two great lyric videos that Christian Rios, this amazing videographer from Miami, who's worked with Neal Morse and a bunch of other great Flying Colors. He's done a bunch of great videos for all them and a bunch of other stuff. He's a killer, super talented young guy. He did a couple of great lyric videos for me. That's on my YouTube channel, Nick DiVirgilio. You can search all that stuff. And then when the record actually is released, you can buy it on my website, nickdivirgilio.com. You can buy it on Sweetwater's website. They're going to sell it for me too, which is great. If you're in the UK or in Europe watching this, you can buy it at Burning Shed. English Electric, it's part of Big Train's umbrella. They're selling it. So, and then on top of that, Entertainment One is a distribution company from Toronto, Canada. You can buy it on all the regular digital places like iTunes and Amazon Music and all those kinds of places too.
If you get it from Sweetwater, does it come with a roll of Smarties?
It might. Yeah, you'll get a little package of candy.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, whoever puts that in the box makes everybody smile. So thank them, whoever the candy stuffer is. That's such
that started from the beginning of the company. So I'll take a little left turn here. Sweetwater started with our owner Chuck Sirac, started the business out of a VW bus. He had a mobile recording rig in his VW bus. and he would drive around Fort Wayne, Indiana, and record anybody who wanted their stuff recorded. So he'd go to a church and he'd record the choir, and someone wanted to record a record, and he would, he had a little, reel-to-reel tape machine and that kind of stuff. And he would record these people, whoever wanted it. He would go home at night, mix their stuff down, put it on cassette, and then he would deliver it the next day with a little bit of candy. And then, he built that thing into this enormous empire that is Sweetwater today. It started out a VW bus mobile recording rig, recording local bands and local things in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He turned that into what it is today.
That's really
Wow.
cool. Well,
It's a pretty amazing thing.
that's
But the candy stuff started from the early days of the company.
that's a personal touch that you just don't get from anybody else. It always makes me smile when I open the box and there's some in there.
Yeah.
It's very cool. All right, I'm going to do a few questions that came in online at the Facebook chat here, just to go off script for a minute here. Okay. Our friend T. Michael Crawford just wanted to say Spock's Beard 10, I guess that's what you call the album, right? Is one of my all-time favorite albums, especially Edge of the In-Between. In fact, all 4 of the Spock's Beard albums that feature Nick are my favorites. You are the best.
Well, thank you very much.
They kick ass, no doubt.
My friend R. Alan Seiler has a few comments. Nick, I first discovered Spock's Beard in 2000 with the 5 album, and which is still my favorite Beard album. I saw you that year at the Atlanta at the Dragon Con, and it was a phenomenal show.
That was a strange gig. That was fun.
Last time I saw you.
Oh,
That was the first one?
That's the last time you and I got together. Remember, it was the weekend before 9/11. That's the last time I saw each other.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah, it was that was a strange gig for Spock's back in that day.
Yeah. Dragon
It was amazing.
That whole thing is quite an adventure, I went last year, and you know how many in the most recent movies, Thor, the God of Thunder, is like all fat and looks like the Lebowski or something. There were more fat, lazy Thors at Dragon Con last year than any other character. It's so easy to do. You just kind of.
But when we played there, a lot of people thought Spock's Beard has something to do with Star Trek. They had no idea what kind of band we were, and we had really nothing to do with Star Trek at all. So it was kind of like there was a bunch of people to start the show, and then after the first couple of tunes, it got smaller and smaller, and by the end, there was just a handful of people hanging out.
Oh wow! Well, that you probably made some longtime fans though out of the ones that stuck around. So, how did the name come about? I mean, we know what spawned it, but what was the inspiration to name the band?
Spock's Beard?
Yeah.
Oh, we were called at the beginning. We were called a bunch of different things. I forget. I think August was one of the first names of the band, or something like that. But then after we were together and playing for probably a year, I don't know, give or take. We had a sort of a blind vote on band names. I think someone else in LA had the same band name, so we had to change and come up with something else. I think that's how it was. And we all wrote down some ideas on a sheet of paper and kind of put them in a pot and sort of had a blind viewing and see what the best thing that came out. And Alan came up with Spock's Beard. He was the one that put Spock's Beard in the pot. And I think everybody unanimously picked that one. Oh, that's a good one. Never heard that before. Let's pick that. And that's how Spock's Beard came about.
Well, it definitely sticks with you,
Yeah.
Like,
And I had no idea at the time that there was an episode of Star Trek where Spock had a beard. I had no idea.
Alternate universe, man.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So
you all could have grown ones for a Dragon Con, and they would have been like,
yeah,
okay. Yeah, okay. So let's see what else we got here. Any other questions, Carlos?
Actually, I have so many. We don't have enough time.
Well,
but Nick, one thing that I have to ask is I'm a huge Rainey McStein fan as well. Are you guys ever going to do any more stuff as The Fringe?
Yep. We are planning a new record to start recording this July.
Yes. Awesome.
I'm thinking about that. And we've been thinking about that for a long time. It's just been schedules up to this point. Jonas is very busy with Steve Hackett. Well, he was until all the touring stopped, but very busy with Steve Hackett for the last year or so, or however long he's had the gig. Steve
Yeah.
toured like crazy, and Randy's been pretty busy, and I've had my gig and big train and stuff. So it just the schedules weren't really aligning themselves like we wanted to. But I think the three of us are all in agreement that we dig that project a lot. And now that this lockdown crap has been going on and things are changing for the time being, at least, we've committed into doing something else. So yeah, I think we're going to start recording remotely, sending off the demos back and forth and try to build some tracks this July with I think my goal is to have a record out sometime early next year of a new Fringe record.
Wow, man, that's the best thing I've heard in a long time. Then, thank you.
Randy is a wonderful talent.
Yeah,
I haven't heard him yet.
He is amazing.
Making a lot of waves on the prog scene in the last 5 years. And
good.
Yeah.
For good reason. I mean, his solo shows alone. He was opening for
Pineapple Thief.
Porcupine Thief. No.
Yeah.
Pineapple Thief. On their recent tour, which of course had Gavin Harrison, who was with Porcupine Tree. On drums, one of the most crisp and articulate drummers I've ever heard.
Oh yeah,
right.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So
that's great news, man. Wow, I'm thrilled.
Yeah. Any chance I can play with Randy and Jonas at the same time, I will jump.
Oh
in.
my god,
they're both amazing.
Oh, when I heard there was a three of you guys doing an album together, I was like, you've got to be shitting me. And it didn't disappoint, man. I tell you, that is a smoking. Still one of the best 3-piece prog albums I've ever heard. I mean, it's if anybody that's listening to this tonight that hasn't heard that yet, run. Don't walk, run to get it, because it's amazing. Amazing album.
I got another question here, and you probably get this one a lot. Any chance you'll ever work with Neal Morse again?
Well, I did. Yeah. Anytime Neal wants, calls or need, I'm around, I'm happy to play with Neal. He's great. I mean, he's a friend of mine, and I'd be happy to do anything with Neal because he's really good at what he does. I was part of that whole Jesus Christ, the Exorcist thing he did last year, 2 years ago. How long's it been? It hasn't been that long.
Yeah, it's been a little while.
He does his festival every year, his Morse Fest thing.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, man, that guy's built a great little mini empire of his own thing. I give him all the props in the world.
It's a cool album.
He did what he needed to do, and he built a cool thing. So anyway, he did his festival. I'm not that far from Nashville. I'm about 5 hours by car. So he asked me to come down and open up the festival one year. So there was like the last 4 years, I was opening up Morse Fest quite a bit. So I did it with my little, ukulele band and the different things. And he asked me to sing a part in his little his rock opera and that last year. So I was part of that, and yeah, anytime.
Okay, very cool. Well, yeah, a good friend of mine, Jake Livgren, sang on that as well. I'm sure you.
Jake's great. That was fun. It was a cool hanging out with him. He's very talented. He's got a great voice, nice person. It was a fun time hanging out with him. For sure.
He's awesome, and we're both from Topeka, so we kind of have that connection. He was actually my first guest on the first episode of this show a couple months back.
Yeah, his family was there. That was a fun little weekend. There was a lot of cool hangs with that whole thing. And Neal puts on a show. It's like he doesn't do stuff small. I mean, these are huge productions with tons of people. That guy knows how to delegate and get people to do things to make, to an end. He's a great planner.
Oh yeah,
He's able to put these things together. It's amazing.
Was that where you guys did Snow, the Spock Spirit?
That was the same venue. Yeah, that was the year prior. Or 2 years prior, however it won. But yeah, that's the same place, exactly.
That album is really, that album's in many ways, I think a lot of people's favorite Spock's record. It's just because it's,
and it was good that we finally got together to play that whole record from top to bottom, because we never had a chance to do it with him until that festival. Spock's Part 2, we played parts of those songs when we toured, but we never were able to play that record in its entirety like we did with Neal.
The whole enchilada.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what else. So again, let me remind everybody, this is SOAL Night Live, episode number 9. My guest tonight is the amazing Nick DiVirgilio, vocalist and drummer. And you probably heard him or seen him with the likes of Spock's Beard, my Keneally band, Beer for Dolphins, and Tears for Fears, right? How did you come about that gig? How long you been playing with them, and what albums were you on?
Albums, not very many albums, but I toured with them from 1995 till 2010. Did a few live things, lots of touring, hundreds and hundreds of gigs. I got that gig from their previous drummer named Brian McLeod, who I became friends with through Kevin Gilbert. Brian played on the Elemental tour and then played on the record Raoul and the Kings of Spain. We had started a band together with Kevin called Caviar, me, Brian, and Kevin.
Oh yeah,
trio.
Sultan of Brunei and other
Yeah.
assorted.
And the time came to tour Raoul and the Kings of Spain, and Brian ended up not wanting to go. They wanted to build Caviar into a bigger thing, or at least try to. So he recommended me to Roland, and that's how I got the Tears for Fears gig.
Awesome. They're such an awesome band. They came out of the 80s, but they were really timeless. They don't really have a dated kind of thing like a lot of their peers, I think, have. I
still hear Shout and Everybody Wants to Rule the World on the radio every day, almost. I mean, they're constantly played.
They're great songs to play if you're, I play them in a few cover bands over the years, and they're just like, big in an 80s tribute, you play all this kind of synth pop stuff, and finally you get to a couple really great songs like, Set Them Free from Sting and Tears for Fears tunes, it's like, here we go. This is the good stuff. So that's awesome.
Do you guys, Nick, or do they have any plans of doing anything new again? I mean, because everybody loves a happy ending. To me, that's one of the best albums of the last 20 years. I mean, incredible album, but they haven't done anything since.
I don't know. I know they call me every once in a while in case they need me to fill in. I was able to fill in once not too long ago for a gig, and we're still got email and all that kind of stuff. So I keep in touch with the guys every once in a while. But I don't know what they're doing now. They were touring quite a bit the last few years, doing their, kind of like they're playing all the hits sort of tours, and which they should do because they make a killing doing it. And they still sound great. But new, I have no idea, to be quite honest with you.
What were some of your favorite tunes to play in their set?
In a Tears for Fears set?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I mean, really,
I'm sure, but
quite a bit of them. Women in Chains was always a fantastic tune to play. Sowing the Seeds of Love was fun for sure. Some of the like memories, some of the old tunes, Memories Fade was a fun track to play. What else? All kinds of stuff. Whenever I got to play Bad Man's Song, that was fun. Quite a bit of stuff. It was a great gig. It was a very musician friendly gig because it was specific but difficult. I mean, there was a standard you had to be at every night, which was great. Roland Roosevelt is a fantastic musician, great artist. Kurt Smith, great bass player. It was fun to play with him all the time. It was a great experience. Played with him quite a bit over the years.
Great song.
You're talking about kind of rewiring Genesis. I was in a kind of a corporate band, and we do Mad World as a bluegrass tune. So
there you go.
It lends itself to that pretty nicely, actually.
A lot of hits, man. It was like those are some of the biggest gigs I've ever played in my life. Got to play in front of in soccer stadiums in Europe in front of 60, 70, 80,000 people. A lot of huge gigs I did with those guys. It was a lot of fun. Get to see a lot of the world with them. It was pretty one of those sort of dream situations you get into, you try to get into as a musician, for sure.
So we've been mentioning Kevin Gilbert. I think some of my readers probably don't know who he is, but what's the Cliff's Note version of how would you describe Kevin as an artist and a person and his music for the uninitiated?
Oh well, gosh, I don't know. Just a very unique, special musician who was able to hit notes of certain, not just musically, but lyrically and story-wise. He hit textures that were very deep. He was a tremendous musician just as a player itself. He could play any instrument at a really high level. He he's a student of music. He knew a lot about everything. He was a great engineer, a lot of stuff. And for me personally, he gave me my break in the music business. I mean, until I met Kevin, I was sort of like just a floundering guy in LA, just trying to do whatever, play any gig I could get. And I met Kevin, and all of a sudden things changed quite a bit, pretty quickly for me. So pretty special guy. He was he died way too young, and he died very stupidly, in my opinion. But we're still talking about him to this day. So he did, the touch that he made, what he gave to the world as far as music touched a lot of people, even to this day. And he died in 1996. So I think it's cool. I mean, I think what he could have done if he was still around would have been amazing, of course. But again, he was here on this world, on this planet for a reason, whether it was to help me get the Genesis gig and turn my life around, and to touch a lot of people musically, who knows, but he was a pretty special guy, and his music is great.
Yeah, he really is. And for any of you that are unfamiliar, his catalog is pretty small, but what's in it is just top notch. The Thud album. Were you on the Thud album, Nick?
No, there was an EP that was because I came in just a little bit after that was already recorded. So he put out an EP of a couple of B-sides and this cover of Kashmir, the Led Zeppelin tune. I'm on that.
Okay. And then you're like on the Live at the Troubadour.
Live at the Troubadour, yeah.
Live album.
The live stuff, yeah.
I love that album. That those beats you came up with on Waiting are just awesome. The drums really make that tune. Wow, I have some questions related to Kevin that some different folks sent me, including a gentleman by the name of Gruno, who I think you probably know.
The infamous.
That's right. So let's see what he had to say. But before I get to Gruno's, somebody else had asked, they said, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on working with Kevin specifically as a bassist in terms of time, pocket, sound, live, and in the studio.
I mean, he played bass like a guitar player. He didn't play bass like a true bass player. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter though. It was awesome. It just sounded great. He had a tone and a vibe. So as from a drummer's perspective, it was great because the pocket was great. It sat in, but he had more of a little guitar player's sort of thing to the bass guitar. It worked for me. Great. I loved it.
Oh, yeah.
I loved it.
And I'd say, Live at Troubadour is a great example of his bass playing.
Yeah, I mean, he played with a pick, like I said, he played bass like a guitar player, but it's still, in the grand scheme of it all, he understood what the instrument was all about and how drums and bass kind of fit together as in terms of a song, especially his songs, were concerned. And it worked well.
He could have played any instrument live during the set. Why did he decide to be the bass player rather than,
I don't know.
No idea, really. Okay. Well, it's
just because
one more side to his influence. Okay. All right. Gruno says, on November 3rd, 1995, Kevin Gilbert delivered his final public performance. He opened the show for Linda Perry. She was the headliner. Nick accompanied Kevin during the entire set. The two-man band, as it was dubbed. They traded instruments throughout. Linda stood alongside the bar and jovially heckled Kevin at times. Is this coming back to you?
Yeah, I don't remember where the gig was, but yeah, I remember most of it. Yeah.
After Kevin's set, Kevin performed keyboards along with most of the Tuesday Night Music Club as they were the musicians accompanying Linda on stage for this very rare event. Nick and his wife, Tiffany, watched the show from a table a few short feet from the stage. Questions. Is there anything that stands out that you recall from that night now off the top of your head?
No.
Okay. Any thoughts on performing with Kevin in the two-man?
Bruno's got a brain of steel. He remembers dates and details way more than I could ever.
He has Kiss collection too.
Oh my God, yeah. But go ahead. Keep going.
Thoughts on performing with Kevin as the two-man band?
Oh, I mean, again, this was a dream. A dream come true for me. It was my first gig. It was the break in the business. All of those things. I mean, when I say it, that's really what it was. Kevin at the time, and he was only in his mid-20s. He was he was still trying to have his career. He was just a working musician. He put a record out and he was trying to promote his record. All of those kinds of things. So it was a gig for me, but it was a gig with a guy who was I was a fan of. You know, I was a literal fan of Toy Matinee. Saw them live. I love this stuff. Followed him. If you were from Southern California, in Los Angeles, there he was on the radio a lot with that band, on Mark and Brian, and yada yada. So I got a gig with someone who I really admired, which was really cool. And he treated me like he was like my big brother. He was only a year older than me or 2 years older than me, but I mean, I got keys to his studio. I mean, it was an amazing experience as far as that's concerned. And I just learned a lot from him musically. It was, when we jammed together, it felt natural. He was a prog head, but he loved all kinds of music. It was one of those kind of really special kind of connections. And I mean, it totally turned my whole life around.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'll wrap up Bruno's question here. Any thoughts on Linda Perry's set? And
all I remember is that they were on stage. I don't remember any of the music. I remember a little bit. I remember Bill Bottrell being in the band. I never saw him play live before. I just thought he was the producer who produced those records, from Toy Matinee and Tuesday Night Music Club and other stuff. But he was on there playing keyboards and different things and guitar, and it was rocking. But I don't know that many details from that gig.
Okay.
I didn't know that was the last gig either.
Now, did you have a hand in Shaming of the True? I know you've performed it before. Tell us a little bit about your connection with that album. Basically, that's the album that was put out. I guess Kevin was working on when he passed away, and you guys got together and finished it off. How done was it? It almost seems like some of the things have been taken, like Smash Thing was taken from the Troubadour and just kind of tweaked. So tell me a little bit about how it all came together.
Kevin had been working on Shaming of the True for years in various forms. And then I don't know how long before he died, but we finally started convincing him that he should put this record out. He didn't really want to put out sort of like a proggy rock opera at the time in the mid 90s with his career. He didn't think that was the smart thing to do, and blah, all those kinds of different things. Mm-hmm. Sheryl Crow and where he was trying to get with his music and stuff. But finally, we kicked him in the pants enough to where he could start reworking some of the songs. And some of the songs have been around for really early on in his Giraffe days. And we went into the studio and recorded drums for Water Under the Bridge and Certifiable Number One Smash and a few other things. And so he started working on the record, and then he passed away. So when he passed away, his record, I mean, some of the stuff was already done. Like City of the Sun is just like it was. We didn't really touch that song at all other than mixing it. All the parts were there. It was probably 40%-ish, give or take, done. And some songs were completely raw. Some songs just needed a little bit of tweaking, and one other part here, a little bit of that there. And so we got together with myself and John Cuniberti, who was our engineer and mixer of the record. We did a lot of Joe Satriani records from Northern California. They were friends from when Kevin grew up and all kinds of stuff. We basically got together. I went through all of Kevin's stuff. I sort of archived all of his music after he passed away in his studio. And then we found all the notes and everything we could find on Shaming, and then just built the rest of the record from there.
Okay. Well, it stands up as an incredible piece of work. And I think just one of the greatest prog rock concept albums ever, and it's such a good story about, the way Hollywood can lure young people in and chew them up and spit them out. And you performed it live a few years back, am I right? How did that come about, and who did you do it with and where?
We did with Papa J, I think was in Southern California, helped us put on the show. Mm-hmm. But with Mark Hornsby, again, part of this whole, done so many things with that guy. We just, he's a big Kevin fan too. And he helped us put on this show. And, we tried to perform it. We did it in Whittier, California at Whittier College at whatever the theater was called there. And I'd like to do it again. That's, excuse me. we've been trying to through Kevin's estate and John Rubin and stuff. We've been trying to turn that thing into a Broadway production for years, and people have been trying to write scripts. You know, it's still, we still think that something could come out of that record. But the performance was fun. It was one of those one-off things that, you know, it was amazing if you were there. You know, I'd do it again if we could. I don't know. You know, it's just it's a cool thing.
It's neat. I just enjoyed watching it on YouTube, so I believe it's out there if you folks want to look it up.
Cool. Just really quick, I wanted to interject here really quick.
Carlos, and talk for a minute. I'm going to go take care of something.
Okay, sure. No, Nick, I wanted to ask you about Invisible also, and that same vein, because that album is so cinematic. It's huge. It's like a Technicolor movie in audio to me, and it seems like it's a story that would go really well to a Broadway stage or some sort of stage presentation. I mean, have you had any thoughts about that?
Yeah, and a few people have been telling me that too. I hope to go play this record live here in the near future. So, but yeah, people that, you know, yeah, I think turning it into something else could work. Right now, I'm just trying to get it out.
Yeah.
But I think if there was some thought put behind it and some interest there, I would be totally open for that. You bet.
Oh man, I mean, I think it would be perfect for it, and I just think people are really going to be surprised at the depth and the scope of this album. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I was really surprised by it. I mean, I knew it would be good because it's you, but you just hit the ball out of the park with this, and I hope that you guys are able to turn it into a big production like that, because I think it would be wonderful to see it, and you know, to see a visual put to it, I think would be great.
Yeah, I think it could definitely be a fun live performance.
Yeah,
In
absolutely.
ways. Yeah, I envision a bunch of different things. Whether I can pull it all off, I don't know, but I'm gonna try if I can.
That would be cool. I'd be there to see it. That's for sure. And then also, before I forget, I don't want to forget about this. Are there any plans to re-release your earlier solo stuff? You know, Karma and Pieces and those albums.
Yeah, I have some leftover discs of Karma that I didn't know I had, so that'll all be for sale on my website if anybody wants to hear it. It's such an old record. There's some cool things on it, but it's definitely from way earlier on in my career, and the writing, you know, just so yeah, that's there. Pieces you can get on Spotify. There's no physical copies of that. That would need to be remade physically, but you can get it on streaming and those kinds of different things. Yeah,
Right.
so we'll see for sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I just asked because I mean, I think Karma's amazing. I mean, I love that album, and I still play it a lot. And it's just, I would love to see it back out there again for a new generation to explore and to discover.
All right.
So, so what are your plans going forward? I guess the next thing is going to be the album with Randy. Is your next recorded project?
There's a lot of plans coming for the future. So the first thing is obviously get Invisible out as much as possible and spread that into the world as much as possible. As far as recording though is concerned, yeah, so some new Fringe stuff starting in the summer, and excuse me, see how long it takes to record, but since we're all spread out across the world, but that's definitely on the books. Lots of big train stuff coming. Since we're not touring, two of our tours got canceled because of all this stuff. Our first tour in the States and another tour in Europe. So since that all got postponed, we have a live DVD 5.1, all that kind of stuff of our very last show on the last tour of the UK. We toured the UK last October, our first big kind of proper tour. And the last show of the tour was at a place called the Hackney Empire in London. This killer ornate old theater there, and the show was filmed and recorded, and we thought we might get like a couple of tunes out of it, some stuff we could put on the website, but it turned out really well. The band was on fire. It was great that it was the last show because we were, you know, a lot of anticipation, and we had a bunch of gigs under our belt, so the band was tight. Anyway, so that's going to be coming out as a whole new product. Be great to see that. And since the tours got all canceled, we're pushing forward the recording of a new Big Train record. So we'll start recording for new Big Train in November. when it'll be released in 2021 sometime, a new Big Train record. So
how many albums have you done with them now?
quite a few since 2007. I've been recording with them since 2007, so it's quite a bit.
Well, yeah, check them out, folks. If you don't know, Big Train is a modern progressive rock band that it's just really awesome.
Oh, they're smoking.
They have XTC's guitar player too, Dave Gregory. It's so cool. And
Yeah,
you
one of
guys
the,
got-
one of the best bands I've ever been. It's one of the greatest things I've ever done in my life, career-wise, musically and stuff. I love. Yeah, anybody who doesn't know what Big Train is, please go check out all the music. It's such a fun project, and we do the music that it inspires us, and so thankfully it's been kind of coming across the people and building in a great way, grassroots way, and beautiful people and great music. It's such a fun thing to be involved in.
you kind of expanded the lineup as things have gone. You guys got a Ricard from Beardfish a couple albums back. Am I right?
Oh my God, Ricard's so great. He's just stupid good.
Yeah.
Ricard Hueblum. That's how you pronounce his last name. Hueblum. From Sweden. Beardfish on his own stuff. Gunfly. Ricard is just a stupendous musician, super cool person, and the talent beyond belief. I mean, you put him and Randy McStein in the same band. Oh my God, I think speakers would explode.
Wow, that would be cool.
Yeah, so I mean, amazing player, and to get his taste and his feel and vibe in with Big Train, it adds so much great flavor to the music. It's a great thing.
I was wondering.
I agree.
I was wondering what inspired the recruitment. Knowing how talented he is. I mean, it's
we all sort of knew each other, especially Rob Aubrey, who is our front of house guy and who's recorded all the Big Train records for years and years now, recorded and mixed their records. Rob has been the front of house guy for Spock's Beard since our very first tour in the mid 90s. Rob was the go-between to all of these things for so many years. He did a ton of stuff for IQ. He's done all the IQ records forever and all their live gigs. Rob has been really the go-between for all these bands. And that's how I got introduced to Big Train. That's how they hired me for their first recession. And that's how we met Ricard. And, he's been able to kind of tie in so many different things over the years.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Now I want to break from these questions for a minute. And, each time we have a guest on the show, we take a few minutes to go back to your very earliest musical memories. So tell me, what's some of your favorite music that you heard before you could even buy records of your own, like just around the house? Anything come to mind? What was your favorite song when you were 5 years old?
Gosh, when I was 5? I don't know. Like I was an Osmonds fan, and I don't know why I got into the Osmonds when I was a kid, but I liked all that stuff.
Were your parents
at a fairly early age? I think the song was called "Down by the Lazy River."
Yeah.
Down by the lazy river, one big family.
Right.
That was geez, that's a pretty early musical memory. I sang those songs in the school talent shows. And my father, I still have pictures of this. I think there's a couple on my website. You can see my dad was in the liquor business, and he was doing pretty well at a particular time. And he would bring me to these sales meetings, and I would be the entertainment at a sales meeting of a bunch of liquor salesmen. Okay. And I'm like 6 years old. What is something weird there? I don't know, but it got them to sell. Yeah, so that's some old memories. For sure.
Okay. Did you hear any music around the house? Like, did your parents play any? Or
yeah, my dad. Yeah, for sure. Tons of stuff. My brother is 8 years older. My brother Mike, and my sister Chris is 12 years older. So they turned me on to everything I listened to. So the first Genesis thing I ever heard was the Battle of Epping Forest. My brother played me the Battle of Epping Forest when I was 8 years old, and I was hooked. My brother played me Led Zeppelin for the first time. The first song I ever learned was The Rover on drums, and I used to go sit in with his band when I was 8 years old, and they let me play The Rover with them. All of the great music of the 70s. I was turned on to all of that stuff because of my older brother and sister.
That's awesome.
And then, and my parents being from the 30s and 40s, I grew up with all the Italians. I mean, all the Frank Sinatras and anything, that kind of stuff, the old crooners and stuff from all that heyday was big in my family growing up.
Okay, so that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And how about like when you actually had money to buy your own albums? What was the first album you remember buying?
I don't remember the first album I ever bought. To be honest with you, because I've been asked that question a few times, and I don't really remember. I know there was a few Osmond's records, and there probably a Kiss record or two when I was early on.
There you go.
I don't honestly remember the first record I ever bought.
Okay, how about concerts? What are some big concerts that you went to in your teen years that still stick out with you now?
Oh, Tom, all the early Genesis stuff. I mean, see, again, my brother being 8 years older than me, he got to see all of the concerts that I wish he wouldn't take me. I was just young enough to where he wouldn't take me to these shows. So like he went to and then there were 3 tour in LA and wouldn't take me. He went to the Duke tour and wouldn't take me. And I was a fan by that point, right? But I get it. I was probably 12 years old. And he didn't want to like be pulling me around. He saw Led Zeppelin front row 2 nights in a row at the Forum. Keith Moon sat in one time, and on the Song Remains the Same, Houses of the Holy tour, front row. My brother saw so many great things. But for me personally, the old Genesis shows from Abacab and was great. The So tour from Peter Gabriel was killer. I saw some really cool shows.
Were you into Rush at all?
Oh, many Rush concerts. Yeah, the Subdivisions was the first tour I saw, because that was in my later high school years. I was probably a junior, I think, maybe a sophomore or junior in high school, and I saw Subdivisions. That was the first time I ever saw Rush, and I've seen him probably 20 times after that. But yeah, that was a cool old moment for sure.
Yeah, very cool.
Some great Van Halen shows back in the day.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, the 80s, that was such a fun time to go to shows.
Lots of metal shows. I was a huge Judas Priest fan when I went in high school. I really like one of my best friends, Steve Ward, turned me on to Judas Priest, and I all of a sudden, because I wasn't really a metalhead as a kid, but I liked them quite a bit, and got into their songs quite a bit, and saw them a lot in the high school years.
Oh, yeah,
Defenders of the Faith tour and all those things. That was killer.
Yeah, Defenders was like my second tour, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, they were great. I was way into Priest and Maiden. It was kind of a package deal almost in a way.
I saw Iron Maiden for the first time in my life just last year here in Indianapolis.
Right?
My first time I ever got to see them. I just never had a chance. I don't know why I missed so many times, but it was killer. It was a great show.
Well, yeah, I know it's like no time has passed. I was telling Carlos, we were talking about this a little while ago. It's just like, it kind of boils down to the singer. It's like if the singer could still sing this stuff in the original key.
He rocked it.
Wow.
Right.
His voice is as strong as ever.
Yeah, I know. It's just like
it tripped me. Tiffany, my wife, Tiffany, who was not typically a metalhead, although she's been to see Rammstein with me and Maiden and a few other things. She actually, and she's not a Maiden fan really at all. She probably only knows maybe 2 of their songs.
Yeah.
She was blown away how he sang so strong that whole night.
Oh yeah. And that was such a cool old school kind of show, like with the airplane hanging. It was like none of this CGI shit. It was all old school, just like you would have got it in the 80s, except bigger and bolder now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
But it's nice when you can kind of see an old band like that and they are as good as you remember, rather than watching them atrophy as they age. And, we've seen our share of that too, I'm sure, depending on the band. After a while, some groups, they just kind of, they got to keep going. Money's got to be made. But anyway, I don't want to get into that though. All right, let's see what else we got going here. Any thoughts on your re-involvement with Spock's Beard on the Noise 4 album? Was it just work for hire, or were there any thought of rejoining the band?
No thought of rejoining the band. It wasn't feasible to rejoin the band. But since I was at Sweetwater, I wanted to get the guys there for something. So we brought the guys there for a recording workshop. And since they were coming for that, we just, they had some songs and they asked if I wanted to maybe start working on this record. And it was a cool way to get back together. We played live a couple of times. We played on the Cruise to the Edge. We did a show at Sweetwater and made this cool record. Ted's awesome. I love Ted Leonard. He's really cool.
Yeah.
And it was great to have the guys together again. It was a fun reunion, but I wasn't able to actually rejoin the band. No.
Okay. For the folks that don't know, Nick was the drummer for Spock's from the get-go. And then kind of like Genesis, their lead singer, Neal Morse, went solo. And just like Genesis, their drummer stepped up and became the front man. And did like 4 albums? I'm trying to remember. Feel Euphoria, Octane, the number 10. Was there another one in there that you did with them?
Yeah, Spock's period, which was 9.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
okay. And then what brought the departure? Was it the Cirque du Soleil job or something that kind of forced you to have to make a decision there?
Yeah, I mean, I listen. Times were a little bit tough. There wasn't much work happening, and the bank account was dwindling fast, and all that kind of stuff. And sure. I was looking for work, and the Cirque job came my way.
Yeah. Progressive rock is wonderful, but it isn't a great money maker compared to many gigs.
That job came away, and I took the Cirque gig, and really it was just the time commitment wasn't there. I couldn't make the band wait for me. I'll be back in 2 years. You guys just hang out while I'm doing this, and then we'll, that was just unfair. Those guys wanted to play and make music, which is they totally should do, and so it was just my time to step back and let them do their thing.
Out of the ones you did with Neal, which one's your favorite? Or a couple of them, early favorite versus later.
I don't know. I think I got a turntable again for the first time in a long time, and I'm able to hear a bunch of records. Kindness of Strangers, I think, might be one of my favorites.
Yes.
Although Beware of Darkness is great. I love that one too. But the Kindness of Strangers, I think we were finding our voice, and there's some really strong moments on that record. I think that might be one of my favorites. There's a lot of great moments on Snow. I'm a big fan of that record too. And 5 has classic Spock stuff, but I don't know. I think Kindness might be one of my favorite things.
How about of the ones?
First time with Rich Mauser mixing and recording us. Our sound was starting to develop into our thing, all of those, that kind of thing.
That album changed my life. That Kindness of Strangers, amazing. That introduced me to you guys, and that's what got me going.
Yeah, I think Carlos might have been my introduction to y'all as well, because he was probably the first Spock's fan I knew, and still the biggest one I know all these years later. So awesome.
That's right.
How about out of the albums where you were fronting the band? Is there any personal favorite?
I like all this. I like all the stuff we did for sure. I'm proud of that period of Spock's. I think we stepped up and did some really cool stuff. I think Spock's not the one that's just Spock's Beard. So number 9 to me is really strong. That record. There's a lot of really cool songs on that. I did a top 5 with Roy and the guys from Prog Report. We did a podcast the other night, and the little suite on that one, the song "Here's the Man" and "They Know We Know" and "Is This Love." I think there's some really cool songs on that record. Not all really proggy. Some stuff was a little more straight ahead and just rock, but I think that's what was so cool about Spock is that we could really rock when we wanted to in certain situations. And just Dave's bass playing and just the way everybody got together. To me, that's one of my favorite records we ever did.
That guy's a machine, Dave. He's amazing.
All right. Dave Kersner wants to know why you're so awesome.
Is Dave there now? Is that a live question?
No, I don't know if he's kicking around. I'd be glad to have him in.
Oh no, but, Dave's on. Dave's killer, man. I've known Dave since Kevin. I met Dave playing with Kevin Gilbert back in the day, and we've been friends ever since, basically. And I'm very blessed that Dave still calls me to record from and make music with him to this day. And I'm proud of Dave that he has found his voice over the guy. I mean, talk about a machine. That guy puts out records faster than anybody I know, I think. And
but
he's a go-getter, and I'm proud of that guy for finding his thing and making a lot of music. He's got lots of irons in the fire with IK on the side too. His music industry, music instrument and plug-in brand that he's part of. Yeah, it's a lot of cool stuff I've done with Dave, and it's keep making music with him as long as he wants to.
That's awesome. Well, he's a super cool guy. He's been a reader of progressive ears going way back. And I'd say there was a handful of groups that posted there that really got a toehold and grew, not just because they were hanging out at our place by any means, but Dave really became kind of a force to be reckoned with. He's quite a prolific guy. There's another group that District 97. Are you familiar with them?
Mm-hmm.
That's another kind of modern prog group that really kind of has taken off in the past 10 years or so that hung out there as well. So cool people. All right, let's see here. So what's your typical day consist of now during this unprecedented time?
A lot of work at Sweetwater, a lot of picking up horse shit and cleaning a barn because we have 3 horses.
Okay.
A lot of that, and just making, hanging out with my wife and my kids, and trying to get ready for my record to come out, and gear videos for Sweetwater and content and stuff. So yeah, I mean, I still have my day job. It's a great day job for sure at Sweetwater, but I go to work every day and do web content, and we have our recording studios at Sweetwater. So I do a bunch of sessions as the house drummer for the studios, all kinds of different stuff. And then my music, and then home life.
Is that your dog? Is that your dog?
My dog.
That's my dog. It's my dog. Sorry about that.
My dog's asleep upstairs.
What's your dog's name, Nick?
Mabel.
Mabel. And what kind of dog is she?
She's an all-American dog. They call these dogs, which means that she's a bunch of, who knows what she is, but she looks like a lab. She looks like a yellow lab cross. I don't know. We think she's sort of Rhodesian Ridgeback. She has the hair that goes the opposite direction on her spine, sort of that same skull thing. Best dog I've ever owned. She's amazing, great dog. Although she was sick today. She actually threw up a couple times today. So she ate something bad. It could have been all that horse crap that she eats when I go out and clean the barn. Probably not good for the gut. But tasty to her. What can I do?
Dogs seem to come up on our episodes. I had Tom Brislin on a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about his little Chihuahua named Kiwi. And then we had Keneally on, and Mike has referenced dogs in a lot of his work. He even named him after one, but it turns out he doesn't actually have one. So we're
no, Mabel is the queen here at the
very cool. All right, I have another.
Oh, are you there?
Did we lose you, Sean?
I think he froze.
Broadband fart. Let me see if I can get him. Hold on.
Mabel. Mabel. She'll come down. Mabel, down here. Come here. Down here. Come here.
I don't know if his broadband went down or what happened.
I don't know either, but Mabel's here.
There's a delay with the Facebook feed. Yeah, he just sent it. My internet took a ship, he says. Let me see.
Are we still live? Are we still on Facebook right now?
I think so, yeah.
Wait, no, stay. Come here. Oh, hey. Come here. Come here. Come here.
Yeah, it looks like we are. Looks like it's still streaming.
This is Mabel.
Hey, there you go.
This is the all-American dog.
She's a sweetie. Look at that.
At least that's what they call him on the Westminster Dog Show.
She's cute.
She was a rescue.
Yep.
6 weeks old. Someone left her on the street at 6 weeks old.
Yeah, ours too, man. It's horrible, isn't it?
Best dog I've ever owned.
And you know what? That means that she's with you, so that's good. All right, it looks like we're gonna have to, hang on a second. That means that she's with you, so that's good. All right, it looks like we're gonna have to. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. He's the one that has all the questions. So, do you want to just cut it now, or what do you want to do?
Well, we could sign off. I'm just hanging here. If you guys want to hit me back, if it gets going again, just let me know. I'll jump back on, whatever.
Yeah. He just sent me a message. Hold on. He's going to try to get back in.
Okay.
And then if not, maybe he may have to restart the room. I don't know. I've never done one of these things where you have a Zoom going with a Facebook at the same time. So let's see what happens here.
So you guys do this show how often?
He does it every week. This is the first time I've done it with him. He just asked me to co-host because I knew you, and he thought that I could bring a little different flavor to the conversation. But he always usually has guest hosts that come in.
Technology.
There he is.
Okay. Hi, guys. Sorry about that.
All right, man. You're back.
I'm back. I was getting close to the end anyway, but I don't want to leave it on a hasty note like that. So, thank you. Yes, I see. Thank you. All righty.
Here.
Okay, that's what I get for saying Gorsica, right?
Right.
Okay. Okay. So we were talking about that song with all the crazy vocal parts. How challenging was that?
Which song? I forget.
It was called the Telltale Heart from Andrew Gorsica's album Reflections, an Act of Glass.
Oh, did you ask about that? I didn't hear you ask that question.
Oh, the internet was probably taking a shit right as I was saying.
Oh yeah. So I never heard the question.
It's another Bruno question. Okay, I'll say it again. In Andrew Gorsica's 2008 album Reflections, an Act of Glass, you incorporated an intense squad of lead vocal gymnastics in the Telltale Heart that had not been heard on record from you at the time, possibly to date. How challenging was that song vocally?
I don't remember 100%. I remember it was fun. I mean, he was a great guy. He let me sort of do my thing, and yeah, I don't remember, to be 100% honest with you, about how challenging it was. It was fun to do. I remember that. He was a really cool guy to work for, and did some cool things with him. Come on, my cat's here now too, so
Okay.
The Menagerie.
Alrighty. So
You've always been involved with those kind of crazy vocal things, like with the Thoughts songs with Spock, kind of like a Gentle Giantish thing that kind of played along. Is that kind of where that came from?
That all stemmed from Neal. He was the first one I ever did that with Spock's back when we did like Thoughts Part 1 and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't really know much about Gentle Giant until later on. So that's kind of where it all stemmed from. This is Natasha, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. Blue eyes. Are they blue?
Like, sort of.
bluish. Okay. So anyway, he had a few more questions about Andrew's song, he said, were there any guide vocals? Do you remember on that when Andrew asked you to do that?
Gosh, I don't remember. Man.
Okay.
It was a while back.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Okay, well, here's one that should be easier. What if,
Make them easier, man, please. No.
This will have more memories attached to it. What have been some of the other challenging songs that you've encountered either with Spock's beard or in your solo career? I'm guessing he's talking from a vocal standpoint.
Oh gosh, there's been a lot. Geez, let me think. Some of that recent stuff that I did for Neal was pretty challenging because I had to sing quite softly and very kind of dramatically on some of those recent things. Let me think. I mean, all of that stuff that I sing on can be difficult in one way or another. Singing it's a whole other animal. You know, you have to emote and give and be powerful and soft and back and forth. It doesn't matter. The song, any song can be hard to sing for sure. You want to kind of get the point across the best you can. So it's not always about just hitting the notes. It's about, having it come across in a way that people can relate to. At least try to, at least.
I got a follow up from that one. Now, your vocals on Invisible are, I mean, that's the greatest emotional range I've ever heard you put on a record. I mean, it's really unbelievable. What inspired you to sing like that on some of those songs? Because that really grabbed me, your vocal performances.
Well, thank you. It just depended on the song, man. I mean, I'm trying to tell a story, so that definitely was inspiration depending on the song and where it kind of fit. And some were sad, some were angry, some were uplifting. So it's just sort of, I tried to fit the vibe of the tone of my voice and what I'm trying to come across with the vibe of the tune and where it fit in the whole story part of the whole thing.
Well, it worked. Whatever you were trying to do, it worked. Because the whole thing, just organically as a whole, just works so well. And I hope everybody's going to go out and get this album because it's
Me too.
It's something to hear. I mean, I'm just still stunned about it. I need to go back. I think I told you in TIFF that I was going to listen to Shaming and then this back to back, just to kind of get that flavor. I haven't had a chance to do it yet, but I'm thinking that's going to be quite an odyssey.
Sweet.
All right, I got a few more fan questions here. I want to let you know that the demonstrations you do on Sweetwater for various gear are always informative and fun to watch.
Cool.
And any regrets leaving Spock's beard?
Leaving Spock's beard?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the only regret is that I don't get it. Didn't get a chance to play with my old buds for, that had to end. It's not really a regret. Just sort of that's what life brought to that point, and I wasn't meaning to quit the band, or there wasn't any bad blood, or we couldn't work together or any of that kind of stuff. It's just kind of how the cookie crumbled at that point in time, and it's how it had to be. So
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, we're still buddy. I don't talk to the guys all the time, but I'm still keep in touch. Al wrote me recently, and I've heard from Rio, and they're still cool guys. And we had a lot of really great years together. Spent a lot of time together over the years. A lot of great memories, and it was a good, definitely killer point in my musical career to be with those dudes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So much there to enjoy. Another person says they'd like to hear something about your writing input in Big Big Train. What initiates bringing something like Pantheon to the band?
Well, as my role in the band has started to grow, or had been growing over the years, Greg just started to ask me to, if I wanted to contribute something as a writer. And this was when I started writing Pantheon. Gosh, that was in 2000. It was a while ago, 2013 or 14 or something like that. There was a talk about doing a concept record, a different one that we never really completed, but just asked me to contribute some things. And so I kind of came up with that particular tune, Pantheon. We were living in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in this small kind of hotel apartment sort of thing. And my wife had a neck fusion surgery and at Penn Hospital in Philadelphia. So while I was sort of like taking care of her and working at my Cirque show every night, I would come home and work on this little tune. And it turned out to be Pantheon. Now, it's just one of those things where Greg just started asking me to, contribute a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I would send them things and they go, well, this might work for this. And it just sort of kind of fell into place. To make a long story short there. I mean, it was a long answer, but Greg just started asking me to contribute things over the time. And it was just something I wrote. I didn't write it for a certain reason. I didn't have an inspiration or write me something about this or with this thing in mind. I just kind of came up with that, and it sort of evolved into what came out on Grand Tour.
Did you write it with Big Big Train in mind, or was it just something?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, he kind of gave me some, this is what we're thinking of. If you come up with something, let me know. And that's what came out.
Okay. That's cool. And they also wanted to know, do the two main writers encourage the other members to come in with their own stuff? And can we expect more input from you in the future?
You bet. Yeah, more and more as the band has grown, the guys have asked us to do, to contribute, just put stuff in the pot. So between myself and Ricard is adding more and more as we go along. We're just kind of throwing it all in the pot. It's still Dave Longden and Greg's. They're the two main leaders, right? I mean, they're going to make the final decisions, but we're putting a bunch of stuff in, and it's becoming a real team effort. And it's been that way for a long time. Even though Greg and David were writing most of the bulk of the material, what's so cool about Big Big Train is that they really want everybody's voice to interpret what they write and have it be that sound. So it's a group thing, from Rachel's violin and Danny's keyboards to Dave Gregory's guitar. All of that adds to the flavor of Big Big Train. And that's what it's become. That's why it has that sound. Greg writes these amazing songs. David writes these amazing songs, but I think it's all of us as a whole is what makes it such a unique, fun thing.
Excellent. Excellent. And let's see. Somebody else said you're amazingly good at demoing products. You understand how to get the best sound out of gear, and your ridiculous technique makes most anything sound good. So,
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, Carlos? Oh, you're muted.
Muted.
I'm not a lip reader.
Duh.
There you
Sorry.
go.
Tell us some more about the musicians that contributed on Invisible.
I have some killer guest artists on this record.
Yeah, they're kind of well known, some of those.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
And a lot of it stemmed through me being at Sweetwater and these recording workshops and just, the people coming together in that respect. But, everybody from Paul Gilbert playing a guitar solo for me, Jim Godfrey from Frost, one of the greatest keyboard players ever. He's amazing, that guy. He contributed a couple of keyboard solos for me. Randy McStein's all over the record. Jonas Reingold, one of the greatest bass players ever, all over my record. A lot of the local guys here from Fort Wayne and Sweetwater, Dave Martin and Don Carr and Phil Nash, all the way to Tom Hemby, who is this amazing guitar player from Nashville, who's played on, he plays with Vince Gill and different people. So I've had a lot of people from different, not the prog world, right? Carl Verheyen, who has played in Supertramp for many, many years.
Awesome. Yeah.
Wow.
Just amazing guitar player. And then I got to work with Tony Levin, which is a dream come true. Tony's on a couple tracks. Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick. I got Rick Nielsen on a song on my record.
Wow.
Which is amazing, right?
Right.
And Jordan Rudess from Dream Theater, killer keyboard player. So I mean, so many great people contributed some amazing things.
That's a regular bounty of talent. So yes, check out the new album Invisible.
Yes.
And remind everybody again where they can pick that up at.
So my website, nickdivirgilio.com, for sure. And we'll send you the record anywhere you live. But if you're in the UK or in Europe, go to Burning Shed, which is a great source for anything progressive related. And then if you want to buy it, digitally, it's on iTunes and all the regular stuff, and streaming on Spotify and Amazon Music and all those places. You can go to sweetwater.com. Sweetwater is going to sell it as well if you want to buy it there. But nickdivirgilio.com is a great spot to buy the record.
I would start with folks. A few questions about your drumming influences. I had a reader that was wondering if you'd share your thoughts on a few of these different guys. If I just throw these names out randomly, starting with Jeff Porcaro.
One of the greats, one of the groove masters, one of the great session masters of the world. Again, passed away too early, right? But like, an icon. I mean, the things he did in his time on planet Earth are it's like drumming 101. For if you're a player, you need to learn, study his playing. He's part of the pantheon of great drummers.
Absolutely.
Whether you're a Toto fan or not, I mean, you can't deny his pocket, his feel, his contribution to the world of drumming.
He's just great. The way he kind of did that Purdy shuffle and gave it his own little twist was friggin' awesome. And it just, everything he plays on feels so good.
Yes. He's a groove meister, no doubt.
Yeah, deep pocket. How about Vinny Colaiuta?
One of the greatest drummers ever. He's in the top 5 all time. Yeah, Vinny's amazing. I mean, he's almost untouchable. He's so great. It's ridiculous. And a super nice guy. And I've become, we're not close friends, but Vinny actually calls me on the phone once in a while. Again, one of those crazy things in life that I never thought would happen. And it's all because of Sweetwater. And we've become friends, and I've interviewed him, a couple of times, and he's been there for projects that I've helped out with and different things like that. But he's a really cool guy. He's just a super nice guy and just a tremendous musician. I mean, beyond, he's otherworldly. What can I say? Vinny Colaiuta is otherworldly as a player is concerned. He's just great. And
have you ever heard that
Drumming
story?
Hall of Fame. He's in there. He's one of the Mount Rushmore heads. Vinny Colaiuta.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember hearing a funny story about him playing, something like the Black Page with Zappa, and like eating sushi while he was doing it. Like he was doing all this crazy shit and somehow not missing the beat.
I used to go to the Baked Potato in LA all the time, especially early on in my career, in the early 20s, constantly. Every Monday night was jam night and all kinds of stuff. One of the most iconic places in the world to go see great musicians. And he'd play there quite a bit, go in and sit in. And I thought maybe he's quit smoking now, but back in the day he smoked a lot. And he used to have, a cigarette dangling from his lip while he was playing the most incredible stuff.
Right.
He'd be doing a drum solo and the ash would get all the way down, and he would pick up a new cigarette, light it with the old one while he's still playing, This is when you could still smoke inside of clubs. Obviously, you can't do that anymore, right?
Yeah.
And for years now, but back in those days, you could. And it's like, stupendous.
Yeah.
Awesome. How about
And he still he plays to this day as good as he ever played. He's still as good as he ever was.
How about Virgil Donati? That's a more modern name on this list. Any thoughts on his style?
He's an incredible player.
Oh yeah.
He's one of those guys that took drumming to a whole other level as far as what you could do on a drum kit. He was one of the first guys that was just the stuff he could do with technique and speed. And it was like, stuff that I thought was like unattainable as far as what your limbs could do and stuff. Just he could do effortlessly. He's a real student of the instrument, and he put in a lot of time to get to where he is. The he's an amazing musician.
Oh yeah, one of a kind for sure.
Yeah.
Who were you said Phil Collins, obviously. Who's some of your other early drumming influences?
Phil he's my favorite as a kid, but I mean, I was a huge John Bonham fan, big Led Zeppelin fan. So a lot of John Bonham, a lot of Tony Williams. So like when I was early and on, like when I was, in my 7, 8, 9, 10 to my early teens, it was all Phil Collins, all John Bonham, Bill Bruford, that kind of stuff, Neal Peart. But then as I got a little bit older, my musical taste expanded. So I became a huge Tony Williams fan. He's probably he's in my top 3 of all time. And then and then just the list goes on. I mean, anything Motown and funk, I was a huge fan of that, from Bernard Purdie to Clyde Stubblefield and all the, anything Motown, anything funky like that from early Tower of Power and the Meters and anything soul music, I'm a huge fan of. And that was a big influence on me as well.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
I can hear it all in your playing. So you got some wonderful influences for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess we're about done here. Anything that you'd like to share with us before we wrap it up?
No, man, just thanks for having me. I appreciate all the time. And, check out the new record when it comes out, when it drops, June 26th. And I hope you like all the new music. And, thank you for all the support, and keep supporting music and musicians out there. So many musicians are having a hard time with what's going on, and livelihoods being just taken away from so many players. I'm really blessed that I've had this Sweetwater gig. I have a job to go to, so I'm one of the lucky ones for sure. But so many musicians have been just hit hard with this pandemic thing and everything else that's going on as well. So it's keep supporting music the best you can, and that's a good thing. Music brings joy to the world, and it always has, and it's a healer in a lot of ways too. So it's sit back and love everybody and listen to music. There's always a way to kind of find joy in life again with music.
Absolutely. I'd say it's
Amen.
more important than ever in these days. It's like the panacea for your soul that we're all in need of. So excellent. Well, Nick, thank you so much for being part of our show.
Thank you.
It's been kind of a thing that I came up with the pandemic. I've been interviewing people, and writing for years with progressive ears, but this whole Zoom thing is like, well, why not? Seems like a good way to spend Saturday night. So thank you so much for being part of it. And tune in next week's episode number 10. Guess who my guest is?
Who is it?
A young child actor who was on the last season of the Brady Bunch. Looked like a little John Denver. You know who I'm talking about? You guys, I don't know if you guys are old enough. You can remember this or not. His name's Robbie Rist, and he was cousin Oliver. And, he's a child star in Hollywood, basically in the early 70s. And he's also a musician and a producer. He recently did the soundtrack for the Sharknado movies that you might have heard of.
Nice.
And he's also a famous voiceover actor. Probably one of the biggest gigs he had was being Michelangelo, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, in all of those movies where the people were wearing the suits, you know, but the voices were dubbed in. And yeah, that's good and interesting. You know, it's like, you know, my show's about music, but it's, you know, other entertainers as well. And he's kind of like
it's a big world out there. If you can find a way to find your niche, then and that's it, then killer. Go for it.
Yeah, you know, just casual conversation for an hour and a half, you know.
Yeah.
Fun stuff. So thanks a million for being part of this. I really appreciate it. Okay. Carlos, good to see you, brother. It's been a while. And
same here.
To see you in the flesh sometime before the year's over.
I hope so. Let's do some jamming.
Yeah, and I just want to tell all of my listeners, thank you for tuning in and hang in there. You are stronger than you know. And, you know, keep taking every day, one day at a time with an open heart and an open mind. We're going to get through this. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. And let's do it again sometime.
All right.
All right.
All right. Good night.
Stay
Good to see you, Nick.
All right. My pleasure. Take care. Thank you, Nick and Carlos.
Take care.